what went, I don't know, just different techniques we've tried without this idea of, actually being intentional about thinking through where we're going and that kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, because I was talking with Katie this morning about the 5-year plan. I kind of wrote about that in the newsletter and saying had this 5-year plan. I really did have that for work this week, and just talk about all these options. And I really told her today, I was like, man, the more I think about it, the more I'm like, a real option is to, get out in 2 years. And so we started talking about those different things. But I just thought about, like, in the past, when I treated like thinking about future planning or future, down the road goals, and how I just kind of dismissed it, and it didn't, I guess I just didn't, it didn't have any motivation to go towards something. And I was just kind of going forward in life, I guess, and just letting life kind of happen to me, I guess is kind of how I felt looking back on it. I don't know if I would have said that at the time, but now that I use it as a more intentional piece of thinking through where I'm headed and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I feel like I really am in more control of what actually happens, even though you can't fully control the future. I'm fully aware of that, but
sure,
that's just kind of the sense that I get. And I don't know for you, I was going to ask, like, when you kind of made the shift into this intentional thinking about the future.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, well, being in the Army, the 5-year plan is just like constantly, articulated, shoved down people's throats. But I went through my whole career in the Army, and I think, like, I maybe did a half-hearted job one time, and the rest were just like, hey, do this and check the box. So I thought it was interesting when you started using, or we started using that language, hey, 5-year plan and all this kind of stuff. And I was sort of trying to figure out, like, yeah, man, Blake's sort of having this realization that, wow, it's been really helpful. I wonder what would have happened if I would have been more intentional in that. And I don't quite know why I wasn't back then. I think some of it is being forced. Would you agree? Just sort of like, hey, do this and send it to this boss that you may or may not respect, right?
Well, that's what one thing was that, I think I said it, like, I was tasked with an action, so I completed the task. I just turned in whatever with a couple things, but I made it look like it was thought through, but I had no intention of actually sticking to this or make decisions based off of it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the same way for me. And especially, I think, what I've realized, or what's prompted me to be a little more intentional with that, I think, is that it's more, I'm more, well, I think more, I can do more, I can affect more of the stuff. When I was in the Army, it was sort of like, hey, here's the roadmap. Your 5-year plan looks almost the same as everyone else's 5-year plan. So what's the point of this? Or where is my own volition? Where is my own sort of desires come out of this? And so, I mean, to get back to the first question you asked, I think I really started doing that maybe about 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago, when I was planning on getting out of the Army, because I wasn't planning 5 years in advance, I don't think, but I was like, here's a vague idea of sort of where I want to be, and like, here maybe the next 3 to 6 months, here are steps I need to take there. So, file my paperwork to get out of the Army, start telling people that I'm getting out of the Army, that whole deal.
But here's the thing. I wonder, so because you had that shift, you're like, okay, I'm going to make a transition into the unknown. I'm no longer going to stay in this career field.
Yeah.
Now I've really got to start thinking about where I am headed. I mean, is that fair?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but what an interesting concept, the fact that you had job security and future security. And then the minute you said, I'm no longer going to follow this path, then you said, I've really got to start thinking about what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
So that security or job security certainly probably played a role in the urgency of
I think
thinking through it.
Yeah, it's just sort of like, okay, bam, I have decisions to make, important decisions. What am I going to do for work? Where am I going to live? When those were before not really that pressing of an issue, right? So that immediacy definitely had an effect on it. But so for you, as you were doing this 5 years sort of mapping out, what was it in the 2-year frame that said, okay, maybe we could get out of the Army? I mean, I know that's sort of been some of your thinking all along, but what did that develop like?
Well, I referenced that email that you sent just the other day, relentlessly prune
bullshit
out of your life. Because I wrote, what's his name? I forget his name now.
Sam Altman. He's like runs Y Combinator, which is this big entrepreneurial thing out in California.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I appreciated his thoughts on it, but one of the things, like as you're defining what BS is and trying to get out of your life, like you kind of just know it when you see it. But he lists like dumb meetings and pointless meetings and sitting in traffic and all those kinds of things, and juxtaposed with your kid, you only have 52 Saturdays with a 3-year-old, and they're 4, or you only have 8 Christmases when they think Christmas is fun. And so all that, you want to, the stuff does matter and life is short, kind of the way he was talking. I was just thinking about that, and I was just like, I mean, really, I really have to want to do, really have to want to do this job.
Yeah.
And my thing is, currently I can say that, like, I really want to be where I am to a certain degree. But then, even when I'm at work, then it's like, there's a lot of BS there.
Sure.
And so then it's like, well, this isn't as much crap as I have to deal with elsewhere. So I want to stay where I am, but that's in the context of, the Army to a certain degree.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, this is really good compared to other stuff, but is it really good compared to, outside of the military? And so I was just thinking that, and the answer is not necessarily no, but I was just thinking, how do I, what do we value in that, and what are the things that we give up with, future deployments and future trips and travel and what we do. And then one of the things, Dad was talking to me about, hey, why don't we work on you guys, coming to live in Colorado on your next move? And, I kind of responded with, well, we would love to come to Colorado, but there's no point in coming to Colorado on the next move when I have to move again in 3 years after that, so now It's not like we're staying there.
Yeah.
And so then I was just thinking about that, but as I did this 5-year plan, then it was like, oh, I can get out in 2 years, and we could move to Colorado then, even, that's the PCS timeline, or, I could get out and go do that, and they'll follow the same timeline, and then be there without the Army, kind of thing.
Sure.
So we were just talking about that at breakfast, actually, because I had a 2-hour delay today. So
nice.
Yeah, we just talked about that and said kind of the what ifs, but it was just interesting to kind of think through that, because I do feel like I know timeline wise, we need to make a decision on what we're going to do, because that sets the gates of the things that we need to do, in the short term, in order to not prepare for, but to make the long term possible.
Yeah.
So whether that's, having conversations with bosses, starting to look for employment, thinking through what that would be and that kind of thing. So, I'm kind of under a timeline where by this summer, I need to say what I want to do in the summer of 17. So, because that's the other thing is I say 2 years, but it's really fall 17, I can get out.
Yeah.
November 17.
And so that's sort
maybe
of
December 1st. I don't know.
Yeah. So it's sort of in the distant future in a way, but it's also like, hey, the summer comes and you have to make a decision a year in advance, and I think that was always something that was like interesting with the Army. Is like, okay, well, every move I make or, addition to my years of service obligation, that I would make that and not, fully have all the data points that I wanted to have in order to make that decision, So I think, yeah, that's really interesting. And so Lindsay and I are headed out this weekend, and I mean, my mind right now is almost somewhat fried, I would say, of like trying to process and trying to plan out some of that kind of stuff. Because there's so many options to weigh, right?
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah. So you're feeling a little bit of that too.
Oh, well, because for us, I mean, it's like, well, we talk about it over breakfast, but I don't know what I want with that. So it'd be nice if I had the thing I want. So like, I mean, I think, well, okay, how do we get to the answer? Like, it's great to think, where do I want to be in 2 years? Because some people can answer that, or what they really want, and whether or not they think that's a reality is a whole nother matter. But like for me, I can't really answer that even right now. I couldn't even tell you, yes, I want to, move to Colorado next summer. I can't say that. So then I was thinking, okay, well, then how do I determine whether or not that's something I want in order to make that decision? And so this is, like you said, you kind of feel burnt out. So you kind of got to take some time to think through it. But I think for us, it's kind of like, okay, well, what are the things, what's the context that we want to live in? What is work like? What is schedule like? We talked about how old are the kids and being close to family and those kinds of things. And, and being close to family now versus being close to family when the kids are, 13 and 14.
Yeah, sure.
That's different. So I don't know. So yes, we finished up the conversation just with like, okay, well, good talk, and we'll just keep thinking about that. But
yeah,
I mean, we don't.
The journey continues.
Yeah, a little bit of that. It's not like we had to decide today, but I don't know. I think about how do you even get to that point? Because that's my thing. I've always struggled with, and I always think of like my friend Andy with. He knew he wanted to be a dentist and an orthodontist. So like he went to school and followed the steps to do those things. Well, yeah, it's like, I don't have anything that specific. It's like, I want to work with people. That's always as specific as I could ever get and still can get.
Yeah. And I've been out of the military where I've had to try to articulate that even more. And I don't feel I'm much closer. I've taken a lot of steps forward in different things and learned a lot, but like to give you, what I'm wanting vocationally in a year or in 5 years is very difficult for me. But like you said, I can figure out, I have a little better grasp of what do I want my life to look like? I don't want to be working 60-hour weeks in a year or in 5 years. I don't want to be away from family for extended periods of time or away from Lindsay, and stuff like that. So like, I have a vision of what I want life to look like. And then I sort of try to articulate or, I guess, give words to that stuff. Just like, okay, this is important. This is a priority, relationships, friendships, church, community, that sort of thing. And then, okay, is this going to get me closer to that sort of stuff or not? Because one of the more depressing things I think about work, I think especially for me and probably you too, is like a high achiever like you are, is like, okay, the moment you leave your current job, it still rolls on. You make an impact and you do things and like you put a lot of your heart and soul into it, but like you leave and everyone in the Army especially knows that you're going to leave eventually. The window is so short to do that. And so it's like, well, man, obviously what you come home to is drastically more important because they're not going to forget, and your impact and time spent there is going to, achieve so much more impact positively or negatively, I guess. Right.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was thinking about, I pass a wall of like the former commanders, and like the one who was just here that I knew, You know, it's like, man, that guy's really good. He's highly respected, but you know, he's gone now. So we don't talk about him. We don't sit back like, oh man, if only he was still here. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
you have the current boss, and that's who you work with.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I just think, yeah, I don't know. Like you said, the impact that you have, but it is almost kind of like you wish you do. I thought you were going to head down the direction of, you know, you want whatever you're working on to be so dependent on you that your absence would be noticed or something like that. I thought that's what you were going to say before you brought up the family aspect.
Well, yeah. I mean, well, that's the thing I'm wrestling with entrepreneurship, and like I have several ideas. I'm trying to, which one am I going to devote my time and energy towards? And knowing that for a long while, I will probably be the linchpin. You know, it's not going to go on without me because no one's going to put the effort and the work that I would put into it. And so,
but isn't that, see, that's the thing. That's just as, for me, just as demotivating. Like right now, so we'll have we put time, we schedule a time to talk. No one is even here listening.
yeah,
And it's like, that's, so if we stop this conversation would stop and no one would miss out. So it's the same thing. I mean, except for the fact that the content's not being made or whatever.
Good point.
But I mean, even so, any business is not, I mean, I don't know. It's just not that, I don't know. Yeah. It's just not that big of a deal when compared to the human value, the family value that we both hold in high regard. Majority of people do or want.
Sure. Well, and I think I'm trying to rack my brain right now for someone that like I really respected and that I looked up to, maybe a mentor, maybe not even, but that like was more dedicated to their work than like the average person. There's a lot of people in the military that I found were like just completely military brain and they couldn't do anything else outside of that or even focus on family or other values. So I didn't quite hold them in as much esteem, but like, I don't know if I can think of anyone that's like sacrificed everything for their job that like that I look up to, And so it's like, I don't know. And I find it really difficult in the entrepreneurial space where all these venture capitalists constantly say, hey, I want to see blood, sweat, and tears. I want to see, reckless disregard for anything else but this, Of course your family's important, sort of like a side note in some of that stuff. Yeah. And so, I'm trying to be like, well, how do I jump into this and maintain at least the grasp of the stuff that I do know that I hold dear and that I think are important, that I want to guide, my decisions vocationally and otherwise.
Yeah, but I think there's an important case of, and I've been thinking about the same thing, but the important case of who you are listening to, because not everyone says that, and not everyone says that is the way to success. But there are, especially, I feel like, some very visible, successful people who do speak that way, and they do, like Gary Vaynerchuk. Like, if I looked at his Twitter profile the other day, or whatever profile I was on, and it says like, family first, but then blah blah blah,
XYZ,
yeah. I mean, I'm like, but I don't know what his everyday schedule is, but what he portrays is extreme on the go travel.
Bless you.
Sneeze on blab. Extreme on the go. And it's just like, it almost it's like, we've all had a boss or somebody that says that, like, oh, family is the most important thing to me too. It's like, well, I've never seen you with your family, or, and I don't know, he's the one that came to mind, but those are just those things, those people are out there. And, or like when you were talking, I was thinking of Kevin O'Leary on Shark Tank, right?
Oh gosh.
And he's all like, the numbers and the money, and I don't care about, anything else, and sympathy and whatever. But like, those are visual people who are saying that stuff. that does not have to be the rule to success or whatever. I mean, one, that's a whole nother level. Billionaire status is a whole nother level of kind of what it takes to get there, and that's probably, it may not be a worthy goal.
Yeah.
for one thing, for just because of the sacrifice. I mean, certainly getting lucky would be nice to get there, that kind of thing. But like to have that standard of, what an hour cap or a time minimum that you spend with your family a week, or, some kind of unique way that you want to do it, that pattern that you can follow, it can be done. In to the same degree, like I have these conversations with Dad, because he's always, why don't you get out? No, it's so hard to, the military is just not family friendly kind of thing. Like, I mean, it doesn't have to be unfamily friendly. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. Like,
totally.
I mean, for me, look, when's the last time I spent one night away from my family? It's been well over a year. And for me, like I was telling Katie, like if I get out, I am taking a job that travels. I don't want to stay still like that. I would, it's okay to be away a couple nights a month or something, like that kind of thing. And so, I guess I just bring that up to think about like the generalizations that you can have, and it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be sacrifice your family in order to make it in the entrepreneur field. That's one of the things that can be unique. I just finished Seth Godin's Purple Cow.
Okay, I haven't read that one yet, but
it's very short, and it's on audiobook. I mean, it came out in like 2004, so I finished it in like 3 or 4 car rides.
Okay.
He's just all about be unique and make your product so unique and so needed that it works. And I just think about that. Like, I mean, that doesn't mean you have to be like whatever the big guy is in the ring, or the big shark in the tank, or whatever, that you have to do it their way. I mean, the whole point is you're doing it your way, and that's what people like. They like your way of doing it.
Yeah.
Of being different, or your product is that different, that kind of thing. And so I just think, and I think about that for you or for me, like you just don't have to, it doesn't have to look like the people that you see. One is there's so many more people that you don't see doing something similar and being successful. And then on the other end is be careful who you listen to as well, because you can kind of feel like that's the mantra. That's what everyone talks about is blood, sweat, and tears, sacrifice. You can spend time with your family later. I need, if you're going to get my money, if you're going to get my money, then you give up your family kind of thing. It's like, well, that's not the way it has to happen.
Sure. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So I don't know, but I just thought about that for you, especially if you feel like, well, what if I am successful? Does that mean I have to give all this time away and sacrifice these different things that we said were so important to us?
Yeah, exactly.
No.
Yeah, not at all. And you read, I stumble across the contrarian articles to whatever the mainstream is sort of preaching or, putting out there. And you're just like, well, that is a very refreshing take. Even, Relentlessly Prune BS, the article I sent you, was just like, man, okay, this is a guy at the top of the game. He's whatever, 30,000 something Twitter followers. He's an influencer. And I mean, some of those lines of like, hey, you get 52 weekends a year to see your kid be 3 or 4, or, your kid's ages right now, Blake. And it's just like, man, that is powerful stuff to consider. And to me, it really gives that lens of perspective. Okay. Of like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Lindsay and I, what do we need to, what are the decisions? And like you said, it is possible. I got to follow the right people. And in the entrepreneurial world, sure, you're dependent on other people, but you're driving your ship here. And like, you get to set that culture for yourself. And that's hard to do and not get distracted and not start pursuing other things. But if, as I do this venture, like it's okay, set these clear things and make sure that those are the benchmarks or the bread trail that I want to follow, you know?
Yeah, no, totally. Hey, Peter. Hey, welcome to Blab, dude. It's good to see you on here. If you're in any, I don't know where you are watching, you're more welcome to watch, or you can, oh yeah, there you go. I was about to say, call in and join us, dude. I'd love your perspective, and you can meet Cameron.
Cool.
Oh, there he is.
Can you guys see me?
Yeah, dude. You look good, man.
What's up? Thank you. I don't feel like I look good, but I feel like encouragement is the first step in the right direction.
No, it's all good.
Hey, Peter, what's up, man? I'm Cameron.
Hey,
nice to
I'm
meet
Peter.
you.
Nice to meet you. I've been following your blog a bit and
Awesome.
Blake on Twitter. So I just got back from I'm just tuning in. So I kind of caught you guys midstream with the like Seth Godin drop.
Okay.
So I'm starting to track, but here's a question for you guys. So I've applied to seminary, right? I got this like idea of seminary, you know, being trained for ministry, that kind of thing. And then today I get invited by my pastor to go check out the seminary he's at. And I'm like, man, what's the undercurrent of agenda here? You know, but here's the thing. Here's what I became conflicted with, and it's a leadership issue, is I'm justifying going to a particular seminary because it's integrated with the local church, right? And I'm already integrated with a local church and could do seminary where it's like 3 minutes away from work. You know, I'm already like in the flow of local church. And I started to realize at the bottom level is what's happening is I have my idea of how I can be successful and helpful. And really what I'm learning is maybe God wants me to be successful and helpful in an integrated way right where he's already positioned me. And so maybe there's a philosophy or principle here of this is what I was thinking on the way home is where does pursuing your dreams kind of disconnected from where you're already integrated clash with pursuing dreams, you know, with traction where you already are, you know, and facing a leadership tension there of what if I feel like I'm bettering myself by I keep running away to the next best thing, or can I like fulfill my vision and dream by pursuing things around me? I don't know if that makes sense, but I thought it's cool that I don't know exactly what you guys are talking about, but if you want to chime in on those things.
Yeah, well, we weren't quite talking about seminary yet, but
no, but as a leadership thing, right?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Committedness versus pursuing your own daydream.
And I think the other thing that popped into my mind was, there's a great term out there. Maybe you guys know it, but it's where you always think like, oh, over there is better. You know, it's the grass is always greener over there. Or if I move to this state, then I'll be happy. If I take that job over there, then that's where I'll be fulfilled.
Right.
Or if I go to it, like, you know, if I go to this state to go to school, or if I stay where I am, you know, it's that concept of like not where I am or where the other place is better than where I am currently. And so,
right.
So to kind of to fight that tension, or to kind of like even navigate that tension of what are those motives that are even in your head of why you're even thinking about different options. I mean, that was one thing I just thought about, you know, for you, Peter. And I mean, that's just one smidgen of kind of what you were talking about there. But I just think it is easy to fall into that trap of, or even when we're answering the question of, hey, where do we want to go? You know, take it back out to like the big topic that we're talking about is And like what I challenged this week was, where are you trying to go? Like have an answer to that. But like to even say that, I mean, that almost implies that you are going somewhere different than where you are. And
right. Well, and that's the thing. I felt like what it might relate to, like I said, I didn't catch the full context of what you were talking about.
Oh no.
But even in writing a book, creating a leadership strategy, it's so easy to envision things disconnected from where we are. And I didn't know if you guys were kind of addressing those things or
no, but I don't think we were. Maybe we were a little bit there, Cameron, tangentially, but I love that idea. Cameron, I'll let you jump in. I talked enough there.
Yeah, no, I think that, I mean, I have definitely felt with, okay, grass is greener on the other side. Now, how do I get there? Because where I am at is not where I think I need to be. And as you were talking, Peter, I don't know any of your story and things, but like, it just seems like the hard answers there are like, are sort of planning out like, hey, is this thing that I'm currently at or currently involved in, it seems like, okay, this church that you're connected with already, why are you seeking something else that's out there? And I found myself in lots of situations being like, okay, it will be better than it is right now over there. And what I found, even like literally this week, I was really frustrated, really stressed out. And I was just like, man, I thought moving to Colorado 4 months ago was going to solve a lot of these issues. I thought that I would be a lot further along than I am now. And it's not true. It just isn't. And I guess the environment is a little bit different. There's nice, beautiful mountains and things, but the stuff I was struggling with in Kansas City, it is still here, but I am making progress on some of those things. But it's like, I think what you have to fight for there is just connectedness. Then is like, what are these dots that you're sort of seeking after? And like, as you sort of start plotting them around and figuring out what does this look like, is this in line with where I want to be long term, you very well may realize, oh, it's just, I need to double down where I'm at. I don't need to go anywhere else.
One of the things I just journaled when I got home is one of my overarching issues is that I love the responsibility of, is that I love the responsibility of me loving Jesus. Placing the responsibility of me loving Jesus onto other people. So what I love to do is say, man, I want my love for Jesus to grow. Why can't you help me love Jesus more? And trying to constantly find places, people, books, resources that are like, hey, love Jesus more. Instead of just saying, he's like, I got my Bible, I got people, like, I should just love Jesus more. So instead of saying I have to be responsible for the outcome I want, basically. Instead of saying, I'm going to go to a culture where everyone's loving Jesus just so greatly, and there I will love Jesus more.
That's great.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, but you're also peeling back a little bit of what that true motivation is when just when you're thinking about another state or another course elsewhere. It's you're peeling back part of that motivation of, okay, well, that's where that community I could plug in, or those people are more like me or more like-minded or like-hearted that I am. So I think that's worth exploring and kind of digging in a little bit more. But I think you hit the nail on the head a little bit, or a little bit further back when you said take responsibility or take action for yourself. And that's like the decision that you make in where you are now is just as important as the decision to go elsewhere or not, because the impact that you're making where you are currently, the relationships that you have, like all those things matter. I mean, it's not, and that Cameron and I were talking about that a little bit earlier before you were on, and saying like there's things in our lives, like when you're at work and you think all this matters, but if you were to leave, that machine would just keep rolling without you. And then you have relationships in your life that would be so affected by you not being there, whether that's family or friends or a church that you serve and those kind of things. So that role you play. Go ahead, Cam.
Yeah, I was going to jump into on a non-church related level. I came out here. I'm working on a company that I recently started. I'm about 3 to 4 months into building this thing. And what I found is that my motivation and my desire is coming down constantly every time I meet another obstacle or hindrance, right? And that I launched this thing with, gusto and like, okay, I think this would be an interesting thing to try out. Let me do this, right? And I'm usually a guy that will plow through obstacles. I'll figure out a way around them and make things happen. But my ability to do that has continually decreased because I'm meeting these hindrances, these obstacles, and the key motivations, I think, aren't quite in line with what I'm trying to do with this company and what I want my life and my energy to be devoted to. And so for you, Peter, it's sort of like, okay, why are you looking at these other options? Is it not necessarily like running away, because I think that's a pretty negative thing, but is this like, are you hitting up some things that are actually really stirring some conviction in you or stirring some challenges? Are you not meeting the people that you think are going to be, push you to love, Jesus more and grow in your faith? And so if you're not doing that necessarily, like if that isn't happening, you're like, okay, well, let me just move on to another thing, and I think I'll find it here. But I don't know how true that is in all circumstances.
That's good. By the way, I'm sorry I interrupted your trajectory.
Dude, our trajectory. This is great. No, we'd love to.
Yeah, we're glad to have you.
What do these little hands mean down here? Is this just the position on the screen?
Yeah, the hand. Like, watch your screen, and I can click you and like give you props. It's like, I really like what you're saying.
So that's like praise the Lord. Like,
yeah, sure. If whatever you want.
Raise the roof.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, it's those type of like testify type things.
Yeah,
like,
not everything's religious.
Why do they have that? Why do they have
well,
okay.
you have to consider, like, for us, it's just us three in here. But so Blab is limited to 4 participants. The 4 boxes that are on your screen there. And so everyone else that would come can only watch. And so they're the software guys are thinking, okay, as a viewer, how do we get them to interact? Okay, they can give props.
Right.
Obviously, you can ask questions.
So I see
in your message,
like 8 people up here. Does that mean 8 people are watching?
They're not. 8 have come and gone.
Been watching.
Whatever. They're right now. Currently, it's just us 3.
Cool.
But 8 people have, come and gone, and obviously, people can go at any time. And Cameron and I have just kind of been hanging out the whole time.
So let me just be a wallflower here, and you guys continue what you were discussing.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say jump in wherever. I don't remember 100%. Oh, here's what we were talking about, and this could apply in the same thing as you're thinking through, decisions and what my motivation is, that kind of thing. Is Cameron? I was talking to you about the importance of who we listen to, right? So you hear voices of, this is the way it's got to be. So for an entrepreneur, this is what right looks like. This kind of lifestyle, this kind of hours of work, the hustle term that's always flowing around. As a Christ follower or a seminary student or a church planner or a whatever title you want to give yourself, like, people have strong opinions of what right looks like. And so you can be heavily influenced by these people, especially if you listen often, read these authors often, whatever. That takes such a big, plays such a big influence on how you feel about how you're doing, how you feel about what you should be doing or where you should be going, and those kinds of things. And so I think just the role of I am conscious of that more and more because of just how I spend my time now. Like, I spend a lot of my time listening to podcasts. I hardly listen to music at all anymore because I'm listening to podcasts or audiobooks in the car. And so I'm realizing my mind is tuned into these subjects of what I'm listening to. And so, like, I have to be conscious of what what podcasts and what audiobooks I listen to, because it's not just my commute, but it also sets my brain in motion for other things, you know, throughout the day or for dead time, because those are just like the last thoughts playing in my mind, or the last person that I thought was an expert.
Well, yeah, I mean, I just think it's interesting. I mean, when we were starting this blog 4 or 5 months ago and this whole project, just the amount of, you know, we were just being good, trying to accumulate research and knowledge, right? But so many of these people were conflicting. One said A, the other said B, you know, and you wrote about it in one of our newsletters, you know, mentor whiplash and just sort of things like that. But I constantly find that, and especially, you know, the social media frustration that's out there is, you know, I'm never as happy or content when I get off of Twitter or Facebook than when I got on, because the comparison, the advice, hey, here are the 15 steps you need to do to have $1 million, to start a blog, to start a company, to, you know, will love people more, to be involved in a church plant, you know. It's just like, holy crap, there's so many things I have to do that I'm not going to get all of them done, because I was also supposed to unload the dishwasher, and that's not done because I was on Facebook, you know. So those are really interesting things. And so what I've done, or if you want to jump in, Blake, but what I've done is like really tried to limit that and really tried to turn off all those notifications, give myself just a little bit of set time to do some of that social media stuff, and really, like you said, be incredibly conscious of who I'm actually giving my precious time to listening to or to reading about.
Well, I think you should be, very conscious and careful of where you give your time, where you give your ears, and what you read, because and that goes back to like where we started. I mean, you've got to relentlessly prune that crap out of your life of the stuff that shouldn't be there. Like, you've only got so many hours in the day, so many days in the week. So that applies to relationships, and it also applies to, you know, what Netflix shows you watch. So like on that, the whole gambit is you're making decisions on that. But the thing I was going to say when I was interrupting you there, Cameron, was the onus is really on you as the individual to make those decisions, right? So, and that was exactly what Peter said. Like, you're responsible to take the action of where you are, you know, in the moment. I mean, that's you. So what you're doing with that, you have to choose it's not just happening to you. You know, you're not a victim here. You're playing a role, and you're actively allowing someone to influence you. You're giving them your time. You're giving them the medium to do so. And that's just what we're talking about for influence, but also how you spend your time, like with your local community or whatever. And so I honestly, you know, there's such a thing as like too much input from other people. At a certain point, you have to go out and do yourself, but also that's where you need like your trusted, you know, few that can say anything to you, and then everyone else is kind of static to a certain degree. Like, you've got to just almost, you know, block it out, but because you're already your own worst critic.
Sure. Yeah, and that is, I think, a huge key point that we should definitely address at some point in the blog, Blake, is like, you know, what are the lenses of feedback? Yeah, please write that down, because, you know, if you're listening to everyone and getting everyone's advice, you're not going to get anywhere. You need the people that know you, that can challenge you, and really, you know, get to the values that you professed before, and ensure that this decision is somewhat backed up with that sort of evidence there, I think.
Yeah, like, well, and going back to what you were saying before, like, as you're pursuing different things and you're trying different things, like you've got to know what will work for you and what you're willing and not willing to do, and work within those boundaries, because there's always going to be somebody pulling from each of the outside the bounds to try and influence you to go in a certain direction, or do it this way, or spend this much time on this thing.
Sure.
It's not that everyone out there is bad advice, because that's certainly not the point, but like, you are your own person. you get to choose, who influences you and who you listen to and who you don't. I don't know. What do you think, Peter? You got anything on that?
Actually, yeah, that's
Wisdom
part
bomb?
of the tension I've been, even wrestling with in this season and contemplating tonight is I'm like, well, if I want to surround myself with people that influence me a certain way, then do that now. But also, if I know what they're doing to become like who they are, it's on me to do those things, right? So I'm like, man, I want to be around marathoners to run a marathon. It's like, well, what steps have you taken to actually like move towards being a marathoner, regardless of who's around you? Like there's resources, but it's also like sometimes we're in a position to blaze trails, not just walk in the trails that we perceive are best for us. So I think sometimes it comes down to I'm wrestling with perception versus reality, ideals versus opportunity. Really, like opportunity is a real thing.
Yeah.
Present time. It's like, no, what's here, what's now. And that's not to say that we can't have vision and move somewhere specific and do something specific and see that cultivated. But there are times when those visions that haven't accumulated are confronted with, visions that could have traction, like right now, or not even a vision, but opportunities that could have traction. That maybe should become a vision.
Yeah,
totally.
Sorry, I speak in more theoretical than practical.
Well, sometimes that's just where you are. I totally understand it. I'm more theoretical at this point as well. Cameron?
Yeah, interesting stuff. We're gonna wrap this up here, but I wanted to tell the people that are listening to the replay that Blake, my brother over there, and me, we blog at blakeandcameron.com, and we really believe that your values should dictate the way you spend your most precious resources, your time and your money, and we're here to help you navigate those decisions and the choices you need to make in your life to actually do that. And I just like to throw it around to Peter and Blake and myself. Any closing thought or like your big takeaway from some of the stuff we've talked about at all, maybe in just like one or two sentences for each other and for the people that might be listening? Peter, you have anything there? Closing thought or takeaway for you?
Closing thought is collaboration is a needed regular exercise.
Good one.
Stuff like this, it's just like stuff comes to the table you didn't realize you had to put on the table. So just come to the table. Here would be the thing. Multiply leadership roundtables. For every leadership roundtable you watch, start a leadership roundtable somewhere.
No, that's good. Peter, I appreciate you, jumping on and trying out this new medium and jumping on with us, and appreciate your thoughts tonight. But that's really golden there. As much as we tonight talked about how other people and other large voices in our industries and in our lives can influence us such a way, we've got to be careful to be able to give them that much influence. The role that we play individually in others is just as important. So you do have to kind of take advantage of an opportunity like this. And I love what Peter said. Like, it really is on you to take a step, to try something, to join a conversation and hop in and see where it goes. I mean, it may not be the most life-changing thing at all, but it can lead to just a little bit more clarity or a lesson learned from somebody. Or worst case, you can dismiss it and move on. I mean, this, the X number of minutes from your day probably wasn't life-changing. Cam, what about you, dude, and wrap it up?
Yeah, I think I'll go back to sort of what we were talking about at the beginning, probably before you hopped on, Peter, is just that, hey, you have to take the intentional time to wrestle with these issues to know where you're headed, right? That's the sort of the title of this conversation, is know where you're headed. How do you figure that out? And Blake and I were talking about 5-year plans, and in previous lifetimes, we weren't serious about that, but really the value that can be driven from that. So that's my takeaway is, spend the time, dig into that, because these are the questions that matter, and they dictate the choices that we make now and we'll make next week and the months to follow.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, great to be with you. Blake, good to have a beer with you.
Yeah.
I know you guys are about to embrace a snowstorm out there, so enjoy it and stay safe, and we'll see you guys next time. Peter, thanks for being with us.
Yeah, thanks, Cameron. Thanks, Blake. See ya.
All right, guys. Have a good night.